Okay, we're connecting to Facebook now. Just hang tight. We'll give people a few seconds to arrive at our page. I know you'll have lots of friends watching today, Eva.
I hope so.
All right. Oh my gosh, we already have 100 people here and we just started.
Wow. They're not going to miss a thing.
No, let's just get right into it.
All right.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Today is the 7th and final day of Virtual Bouquets to Art. I'm Joyce from the DeYoung Museum's social media team. Today's special guest is Eva Monroe, a volunteer on the museum's flower committee and a member of the San Francisco Auxiliary. Each Monday, while the DeYoung and Legion of Honor are closed to the public, our flower committee helps us get ready for the week ahead by creating beautiful and inviting arrangements at the museum, which you have seen at our main entrance, public restrooms at both museums, as well as the staff offices. Welcome, Eva.
Hi, Joyce. It's great to be here.
And we're so happy to have you.
I'm really glad to share this day and anything that our audience is anticipating learning. I'll try and think of a million things to share.
Yeah, so today Eva is sharing expert tips for creating bouquets of varying sizes at home, no matter what your experience level is or what materials you have access to. But before that, Eva, can you share with us a little bit about your background with the Flower Committee?
Sure. I started doing flowers with the Flower Committee probably about 25 years ago. I was just a child, right? I've lived in San Francisco for about 50 years, and in our move to Forest Hill, I met Harry and Ellen Parker. Some of you may recall that Harry Parker was the executive director for the museum and shepherded the construction of the new DeYoung from the old DeYoung. And so I started in the old DeYoung museum with Ellen's help. She said, you should do this, because we had been doing flowers together. I said, sounds great. So I work on week 2. The teams are broken down into weekly teams, one for each week. And you may have seen Leela Sims yesterday leading the tour of the market. She's on our team. And I'm going to give a shout out to Team 2, weekly Team 2. They are fabulous, fabulous.
And how did you find your passion with floral arranging?
You know, it started at a very young age. I grew up in Watsonville, which is in Santa Cruz County, just about an hour and a half from here. And it's an agricultural community with quite a number of nurseries in the Santa Cruz County area and Watsonville that grow all these beautiful flowers that you're going to be seeing today. They are local florists there. And I did go, I'm digressing a little bit here. I did go to the local farms today to do this. But growing up, my mother was a member of the Altar Guild. Catholic churches and parishes decorated their altars with flowers, and they asked volunteers to come in and help them do this. And so my mother was one of those lucky people. Without access to flower markets or anything, they gathered their flowers from the gardens, roadsides, and anything that was in season, and created these very beautiful bouquets on the altar every Sunday. And so I kind of picked it up from there, and she always allowed me to do whatever I wanted with the flowers in the house. And so I would go out into the gardens and the fields and pick what I wanted and make what I wanted. And I've been doing it ever since.
That's amazing. And we're so thankful you're here today taking the time to share your passion with us. And with that, I'll let you take the stage.
Well, thank you. First, I'd like to begin by saying thank you to the Fine Arts Museum Auxiliary and to the DeYoung Museum for letting this happen today. This is a huge opportunity for everybody to get acquainted with the Flower Committee, what we do, and the museum itself. It's a very generous gesture, and I just wanted to say thank you. So today I'm going to go through what I've done in preparation for this. I'm going to show you several different styles and a few tips on how I put these things together. So we had emphasized being able to get flowers anywhere, and I'm talking about just anywhere. Your neighbors, your roadside stands, the grocery store, great resource. You can take those flowers and just take them out of that really tight bundle, separate them out, look to see what you have. Then I always tell people, go out into your garden and look at the plants that are there and pick foliage, because you'd be surprised what you could use. So a few examples of that I use today are hydrangea leaves. So they can get very tall. When I use them, I usually snap off everything but about 4 of these leaves to put in my arrangements. This is an herb. This is flowering at this point, coriander, and it has a wonderful graceful feel. It gives a lot of flow and interest and texture to your arrangements. You don't have a lot of stiff stems. Ferns are like weeds in garden. They're so prolific that my gardener has to come in every few months and just rip it all out, and it just makes me scream because it takes a little too much out. But again, this is the kind of form that I like to use, something that has a flow, a little bend. You can actually bend these things a little bit more careful, but they will actually bend for you if you stroke the stems a little bit all the way down through here. These are good to use in arrangements so that you've got something that's breaking the edge. This is sedum. This is a succulent, but it's very hardy. It's got a very stiff stem. It's not a weed, but it could be. I mean, cactus are like weeds these days in our gardens. Just have to remember when you're using something like this to strip off a bunch of the leaves at the top, because leaves are part of the flower system and they drink a lot of water. You want all your water to go to your flowers. So strip off excess leaves so that the flowers can do most of the drinking. This is not a weed, but I pulled it out. This is a flower called, and I have to look it up, Lismachia, similar to Veronica, but this particular flower has really cool leaves that are a wonderful color, veined in red and tipped in a little golden red. It's hard to see here, but the most delightful of all is the way the head turns. So you can have it face any way you want in your arrangement, but a key point is to follow the flower. Don't make a flower do what it doesn't want to do. Don't make a flower go backwards. Let it flow in the direction that it wants to go and follow it. That way it looks as natural as possible. These are my 2 favorite pieces in the garden. This is a variegated pittosporin. So you can see the leaves are green and white. They have a wonderful blackish maroon stem, which provides wonderful contrast. And also, as you see in the other arrangements that I'll show you, they pick up the color in dark flowers. So you've got some continuity going. And then this is also a great favorite. I have to look at my paper to pronounce it correctly. This is Laura petulum. It's a bush, and you can see that it's got maroony red leaves, and the back is kind of green, and they're very translucent. They have very long stems, and you can cut parts of it to put in short arrangements or in a long arrangement to help carry a line out beyond your vase. This is a favorite. In the art world, red and green are often paired together because they complement each other so well. I do a little painting, and when I'm painting leaves, I sometimes try to put a little red along the edges to bring out the definition of the leaves. And last of all, as far as foliage goes, I picked these out of my garden yesterday and put it together so that you can see when you put your foliage together, what you can get. These are just short pieces, a few long, and I can name them all for you. This is Joe Pye weed. It's technically a weed, but it has such great floral form that I keep it in my yard. And it's very aggressive, so you have to keep cutting it back to put in your floral arrangements. This beautiful red leaf is your Japanese maple, Acer palmatum. This limey green is a cypress that I got as a Christmas plant one year. And I put it in my garden, and I think I had said it was 10 feet tall. I went back to look, it's really about 8 feet tall now, after being in the ground for about 10, 20 years, 10, 15 years. This is succulent. Succulents to me are like weeds, but they're very hardy. They don't even need to be in water. And again, they carry that wonderful green coloration with the red tips. So pleasing to the eye when you combine it with other things. This big leaf thing is overgrown ivy. So technically, you see long strands of the ivy. These are the short ends after ivy's been tipped. This ivy bush is about 20, 25, 30 years old. But so, oh, this is azalea right here. Just azalea leaves that you can cut after all the flowering is gone. So you can just take foliage and make a beautiful arrangement out of that. I put it in an orange vase for high contrast. And at the end, I noticed that there was a little red rim here, which picks up the red in the foliage. So your eye tricks you into being creative. So when I'm working with my material, I choose a vase according to where I'm going to put the arrangements. So in the museum, one of my favorite places to design for is the waiting area in the administration office. It's a low table, so you can do any height or any shape and any number of combination of vases that you could imagine you could use. An example of that would be this piece behind me. It's rather large. My friends on Facebook will know that I use this blue vase a lot in a certain spot in my house. But the vase can take a lot. And they say there's measurements for using the vase versus the height of the flowers. Just use your common sense. Nowadays, you can design horizontally, vertically, all over the place. And when you finish, you can achieve a nice balance. With this particular arrangement, I used 2 branches of the pittosporin. Because I was going to be using blues, I thought that this lighter green would give it the same airy feel that the other flowers have, which in this case are these garden hydrangeas. And the hydrangeas and dahlias are from the Cypress Flower Farm. They're in Moss Beach, very local. And then the big blue flowers are agapanthus from my yard. This is the time of year when you see agapanthus everywhere. Sidewalks, sides of the road. I carry a pair of clippers in my car for what I call midnight clipping. If there's something I see on the road that I think I could use, I just stop, pull out my shears, clip it, quick note in the back of my car and run away. So
Eva, can I interrupt you for a second? We have a few comments saying they want you to bring out the bouquet to the screen. Bring it out to the screen.
Okay, hang on. It's heavy.
Oh, wow.
It's big. When you do a piece like this, you can design in place, or you can do it and then bring it to the place. At the museum, we design in a room in the DeYoung Museum. We lobbied the museum when they were building to allow us to have a space, because in the past we used to design right in the galleries, right in front of God and everybody. It was difficult. But now we have a room that has a refrigerator, table space, shelves for all our things. Okay, let's move on to some other designs. One of the things that I like to do when I'm doing a tall container, such as this, is to put another piece next to it to help balance it and to help bring the color down and over to the lower piece. I think it makes it interesting. I've also done this tall thing in a pair. So this arrangement is going to go in the living room on a desk that is chinoiserie finished. So it's got a black ebony finish. So these pieces will just sit on my desk and appear to just be floating up and out of the desk. So let's see, what can I tell you? The major foliage in this would be the hydrangea. Since I'm not using a lot of foliage, the hydrangea takes up visual space, adds a big block of green. I use the variegated pittosporum to give me movement, the hydrangea to give me mass, and the colored flowers to just give you a shot of boom. When I do my flowers, I like to use different textures and shapes. So we've got round hydrangea, we've got a star-shaped and a kind of a star-shaped dahlia, and we have just buds that are just coming up the top to give it some air. And I just took the same thing down here to the smaller arrangement. And in the small arrangement, I added some chicken wire to the base so that these things, because they're sitting so low and the base is shallow, would have something to lean in. So the hydrangea, you know, is like this, but if I stick it in here, it's not going to flop way down or over, although it's trying to do that now. And it can just sit nice and securely in its space. Same with the dahlias. And then if you've got dead spots, I go out in my garden, I pull out big leafed succulents like this. Just pop it in there so that you don't have any spaces and dead spots that can show. That's a no-no. All right. I'd like to show you a piece that I did last night, an arrangement that I call kind of floppish. I wasn't really thrilled with it, but I thought I could show it to you so you could learn from my mistakes. I'll get that. Can you see that all right?
Yeah, but I don't see any mistakes.
This is a new plant that I've tried from my garden, and it is called a clerodendron. It's a beautiful airy plant with these dark leaves, dark maroon stems, but it's very fragile, I've discovered. The more fragile your leaf, the more fragile your plant. So you need to give it plenty of drink time, I call it. When I put water in my vases, I try and fill them as high as I can, at least 2/3 of the amount of water in the vase so that the stems could have a lot to drink from. But prior to even doing that, I soak them in buckets at least overnight with flower food. This is the flower food that I use, Floralife. It's called Floralife Crystal Clear, and you can order it on the internet. And that's a lot easier these days than going to the flower market. So this goes in everything. I change the water in these containers about every 3 or 4 days. I literally pick up the whole arrangement and hold it really tight in one hand, dump out the water in the vase with another, have my food ready to go again, and my arrangements last a long, long time. Why did I think this was kind of a failure? Well, the scabiosa, which I used up here, the wonderful purple pom-poms, are having a mind of their own. They don't want to go where they want to go. So I'm just letting them do what they want to do. I used dark dahlias because of the contrast between the foliage and this, and the variegated pittosporum, as I told you earlier, has that dark stem, which picks up the dark in the scabiosa and the dark in the dahlia. And then in this area, I used again a bright flower to just sort of draw your eye into this, and then your eye can travel around and see it, the rest of it. The first foliage that I put in here were the dahlia leaves to help support everything else that is going to be inserted. I use the dahlia leaves first, the hydrangea leaves first. Then I put in Sedum. Sedums have very thick stems that go in the vase that will help support the rest of the stems going in, because there's no wire in here, and you're not supposed to use foam anymore. Bad for the environment. So either use a natural structure like plant stems, wire, tape across the top, but I generally don't use anything. I just let the flowers go in and hold each other up. So foliage, the green sedum, a few of the dahlia pieces to give me a sight line for where I can put the rest of the flowers. And the last things I put in are the floaters to give it some movement. There's nothing worse than an arrangement that looks like you took it from the store and stuck the whole thing in a vase. You want to have a garden-like look to your flowers. That's my preference. People can do whatever they want, but my preference is to have my flowers look like they just came to the garden and, oh, they just got transplanted into my living room. So this is okay. The next arrangement is in a rectangular glass vase. And this is primarily good for a sideboard, a long dining room table. You could do both sides of it, but I'm going to be using this on a side table in my dining room, so you're primarily going to see the front. But I never ignore the back of anything, because it's just like wearing a dress in public. The front of you looks great, but if you turn around and your dress is caught on your waistband, it's not a pretty sight. So when you do an arrangement, please make sure you finish the back. And because this is a glass arrangement, you have to make sure that you don't have any leaves attached to the stems that are going into the water, because leaves are your worst enemy in water. They rot and they turn your water brown. And if you got a glass vase, you don't want that to happen. So strip all the leaves off, and you can see from the bottom that all you can see are stems, no leaves in the water. So this was a fun arrangement. What's holding all this together? This didn't make it in the water. Let me just pop it back in there. There we go. What's holding this arrangement together are the branches from the Loropetalum plant. So they are laying crosswise like this in the water, and their structure is helping to hold up all the other stems as they're put in. So I first put in the Loropetalum, then I put in the branchy Pittosporum, and then because I really need something solid to focus how I'm going to put everything else in, I put in these 3 bright colored dahlias. Now, if you're thinking about the color wheel in natural life, opposites really play off one another. So this orange and this kind of maroon are pretty much opposite, but I've used color to help tie it all together from the foliage. And you'll also notice that there's a lot of texture here. The sedum has tiny little bud heads. These pieces are big and fat and round. And then this plant right here, and it's also called the Lysimachia, is one of my favorites this summer. I think there's a flower similar to this called Veronica, but this is distinctly different. And it has these heads that just turn and twirl and add a lot of life. So I like to have foliage that is light and airy on top. Give yourself some space. Don't give yourself that choked feeling. And again, the colors that I'm using here are replicated in the foliage, in the stems of the Pittosporum. And there is one lone hydrangea in here. Hydrangeas, contrary to belief, can last a long, long time. My hydrangeas can last 2 or 3 weeks. And the trick to that is to use something when I first put them in an arrangement, is quick dip. The hydrangeas are famous for being cut and then having all the flowers just droop But if you take your hydrangea after you've cut it from the garden or unwrapped it from the florist, cut it with a fresh cut and dip it in quick dip. That will cause the tissue in the flower to just soak up the water quickly, and the stem practically is turgid with the amount of water that's in it. So alum is a natural chemical, and you can buy it in, I like to use it in liquid form. You can buy it in powder form, but the liquid just seems to me soak it up a lot faster. So tulips, I use the alum for. Hydrangea, if I feel like it, I use it for everything. The dahlias are pretty hardy, but they also have fat stems that have that same kind of cell nature, and they can also suck up water and stay really stiff. But that helps this flower, besides changing the water daily or every 3 or 4 days, so it has fresh, clean water with fresh food last. I recycle my flowers weekly. I mean, all my arrangements typically have flowers from 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago. Any questions from you, Joyce?
Yeah, are we gonna show our viewers at home the little secret chicken wire that you showed me?
Ah, yes. Oh, and I never waste leftovers either. Let me push this over here. This arrangement had the dark dahlias, had a few things left over. So I always take little pieces like this, and I put them somewhere in the room that has the colors in the flowers, so that as your eye travels the room in conversation or dinner, you'll see something that picks up something from the flowers. So I put that together with the flowers. And to hold these flowers in, I use chicken wire. And I had told you that when we were playing with the hydrangea, it helps hold the flower. But chicken wire is a mechanic, as they call these kind of things in the floral world, that you can purchase at your hardware store. I have a hardware store called Pappenhausen in my neighborhood in Forest Hill. You can get it at Cole Hardware, you can get it at Home Depot, easy to get in different sizes. This 1-inch grid is easy to use. You just cut it carefully, form it into a ball because it's got a lot of stick edges, and just cram it down into your container and make it big enough so that it catches the edges. You can also make a grid using this kind of tape across the top of your container. And it forms an external grid that helps support the flowers as they're standing in there.
Amazing. Is that it for your demonstration today?
That's it. I think time-wise, we're almost to the end.
Oh, I think our audience at home is eager for more, but we do have a lot of questions from the audience, and I can read them to you now.
Okay, let's go for it.
Oh, all right. Hi, Eva, from Michael. Have you studied Ikebana?
I have not formally studied any floral design, but I do like to use Ikebana as the basis for my arrangements because it gives me form. And then from the form, I just go crazy and add what I want. I like to do simple arrangements because Ikebana has a restraint that I think is really wonderful. But I also like to go a little crazy with it, but it's a good basis. But technically, European style, Ikebana, contemporary, classic, I utilize all of it.
Okay, another question from Justine. What's the best way to amp up flowers from Safeway, Trader Joe's, or Costco?
Okay, I think the best way to amp up flowers in arrangement is to try and use color blocks. Don't put them in one here, one here, one here, one here, all the different flowers, because then you're lost. There's really a lot of punch in using color together, even in sections, or just using all one color in your arrangement. One of the most stunning things I've ever seen designers do is to take like 3 bunches of tulips and then hand tie them, put them in a container, and it's just a mass of tulips. But back to the grocery store, I advocate taking your arrangement apart, taking that bunch apart, look at separating the flowers to see what you have, and then group them according to size or just do color, and just separate what you have so you don't have to put all those flowers in one place. You can use the one color from it with your foliage as your mass in one place and just take one or two stems and put them someplace else.
A question from Joanna. How do you maximize a bouquet when the life of flowers vary?
Well, the best thing to do when your flower is gone, and it's an easy thing to do, is just take your clippers, leave the whole stem in there if you can't get it out easily, and just clip it. Clip it so it's below the edge of your vase and just take out the flower. And you can reinsert something else. And I'll give you another trick. It's called my cheating trick. I have a dozen silk white roses that I've had for 10 years. And they're getting to look like garden roses because they're getting that slightly tattered look. But they are great for filling in. Now, light color in your bouquets are like little headlights in your bouquets. So they draw you in. They also fill a space. So utilize whatever you have, cut out what's dead or pull it out, and replace it. If you can't get to the market, replace it with some more foliage.
Another question from Anna. How much water do you put into your vase while you're in the process of arranging the bouquet? Once you finish, you top it off, right?
Right. If I'm working where I have to transport the flowers, I only put about a quarter to a half amount of the vase water in that container because you have to move it and it's, it could spill. But this is after I have taken the flowers and prepped them and they've been sitting for a minimum of 2 hours in deep water with food. So flowers can last, an inordinate amount of time, and you can revive them with cold water and food.
Another question from Gina. Are these flowers all organically grown?
Good question. I haven't asked. Cypress Flower Farm in Moss Beach is, I would guess that they would, and McGinnis Farms, just looking at the people looking at the flowers, they look like they're organically grown. Of course, the best way to know is to look at your flowers and see if there's any insect holes and things in them. I brought in a rose today from my garden. This is one of my favorite flowers in the world. This is a rose called Just Joey. And my friends know that this is a favorite flower. It is extremely, extremely fragrant. And it brought in a bee. I have a bee flying around in the dining room. But organic flowers are great. They're better for the environment. They're better for the soil. If you can do that, if you can grow your own flowers without using pesticides, all better.
Do you have time for a couple more? The questions keep rolling in.
Sure, camera's rolling.
From Heidi, I think this is a really great question. Where did you learn to create floral arrangements? And can you tell us a personal story that assisted you in knowing this was your gift?
I don't have any one answer for that. I think the way that I knew that I had a gift for doing flowers was when the people would make a comment on things that I had done. And, learning things is a process of trial and error. And sometimes things turned out, and sometimes things turned out really, really well, and people would comment. So I would keep that in my mind and try and reproduce it. But that one moment when somebody said, wow, that's the best thing I've ever seen, doesn't come to me. It's just accumulation of working and just working with the flowers, and it becomes second nature.
That's lovely. Another question from Tari. How can one keep rose heads from drooping after they come home from the store? Even if I cut the stem before I put them in water and do all the right things, they still droop.
That's an interesting question. I wonder if she's talking if the head droops or the whole thing droops, because garden flowers have a natural droop anyway. So this is a garden flower. So you can see it's not straight up like the flowers that you get from South America. They have a little bit of a droop. But I would say with roses, the best thing to do when you trim it, is to give it a diagonal trim at the bottom. And if you cut diagonally, it exposes more of the stem to suck up water. And put your roses in deep water that's cold and has food in it, and don't arrange with it for at least an hour or two. Give it a chance to acclimate and get revived.
Okay, our last question is going to be from me personally. I know you're the floral expert of your household, but I'm curious, does your husband ever still try to come home and surprise you with flowers?
Only on the holidays and special occasions. And he's very smart about it, because what he does is he goes to my favorite florist in the city, and I have a few, and ask if they could do something in certain colors, or just leaves it up to them, because I know these florists personally and they know what I like. So he always comes back with perfect flowers. But what he never does is bring me a ready-made bouquet. He brings me the flowers. So I get to take the flowers and play with them, but it's a beautiful variety of things that I may not have bought on my own. And he loves it.
I love that story. Well, that concludes our Virtual Bouquets to Art Week. Thank you to everyone who watched with us all week. And if you'd like to rewatch any of our live sessions, simply click the videos tab on our Facebook page or visit deyoungmuseum.org/bouquets. And we have links to all of our videos from this week there. Eva, thank you again. And I can't wait to see you and your beautiful creations when the museums can safely reopen.
I look forward to seeing you then, Joyce. Thank you very much.
Bye, Eva, and bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.